initial idea was to start every show with the episode number at the front, but I've already lost track about a month into what episode number this is. So welcome back to whatever this is of the John Daigle Show, where we go wherever the wind takes us. And today, a very special edition because, first off, NFL football's back. And secondly, it only makes sense then to bring my friend along, 2020 NFL DFS writer, finalist of the year, also the great NFL writer at FantasyPros. He, of course, is Derek Brown. D-Bro, how's it going?
Daigle, what's going on, man? Very few people I get up this early in the morning to talk ball with, and you're one of them, dude. So happy to be here.
The idea of this show was to not only give me an outlet, but to also continue idea generating into the season. And then like sometimes it reaches like 8:40. I live in Central like you. It reaches 8:40 and I think, well, this was a bad idea. Like I should have just slept in instead of having a sixth show of the week, but that's okay. We're here. I still have coffee and everything's going well.
Oh, man.
And more importantly, I brought you on not only because you are also playing DFS preseason with me tonight. You have a column up at Fantasy Pros. So we'll shoot that link into the chat going here. But to get started, I think it's best to explain some ideas because at least for tonight, it's not a giant slate. It's obviously just one game between the Browns and Jets. We are locked into news, but overall, we're all shooting for that 100K prize at the very top on DraftKings with a large pool of people. So what are some thoughts initially to distinguish our lineups and to separate and try to be the one person that wins as opposed to splitting it with 3,000 of our friends?
Well, then if you're going to do that or you don't want to split like you and I, then Jason Brownlee, you're either playing him at captain or you're full fading him. Considering he got so much social media pump and praise and you got Shefty out here tweeting him. So that's where I probably will start a lot of my lineups of making that decision. And then how many of the quarterbacks do you play versus how many of the defenses? Nobody loves to play defenses and kickers ever in showdown slates, but there's some of the best plays on the board because what do we want, Daigle? We want playing time and snaps. Defenses never leave the field. Kickers are always out there. And 7 points out of a kicker or 6 can be can easily make the optimal lineup. So you match all of that with the last time I looked at this total was at 33.5. I got to pull it up and see if it's dropped any. But, I mean, regardless of where it's sitting at this morning, this is all to say, again, a low total game. Yeah, it's still at 33.5. But a low total game, so I won't be surprised if the optimal has 2 kickers and 2 defenses and the person just hits Yahtzee at the right captain or flex position to go along with it.
From my experience from preseason DFS as well, yes, defenses are the way to go. Just immediately starting with 10 points for a shutout at the very beginning. That 10 points, even if there's a couple touchdowns scored, usually holds. It's usually the best plays on the board because we're talking about third and fourth stringers. They tend to struggle as they develop here in the preseason. So locking in both defenses, yes. Also, big picture for me, from my experience with DFS, and I need to also bring on Cody Main at some point from ETR and talk to him about this. But last year, I know he had established the run, was highlighting what was optimal for showdown. And really what it was underdogs, 5-1 or 4-2 builds. Tonight, for example, the Browns did start off as 1.5-point favorites, but they swung. I think because of Nick Costas. Also, there were a couple of syndicates, I believe, that released the Jets should be favored in this game, so just bet the money line. As crazy as that is, since it's only preseason and they're already moving lines. But yes, now we look at the Jets are minus 1.5-point favorites rather than being dogs. And so if we're doing the 5-1, 4-2 build, I think we're starting with 4 Browns or 5 Browns and running back 1 Jet. Do you have one optimal Jet if we are playing it like that? 1 or 2 of your favorites?
Izzy Abanikanda is going to be at the top of the list. I think he's going to get a ton of run tonight. Because look, if you look at their depth chart, obviously Breece Hall is not going to play. Michael Carter probably leaves as soon as Zach Wilson leaves. So I think Zach Wilson probably gets a drive, maybe 2. Maybe we'll see him get 3. I doubt that much, but I think Abanikanda is going to get a ton of run here because even Bam Knight has been ahead of him on the depth chart, and behind him you have Demarie Crockett and Travis Dye, both who are coming off of serious knee injuries. Now, I talked to a Jets beat reporter yesterday that said Dye was going to play. My question is, How much do we see Crockett and Dye in this game? Because they are both recovering. Crockett is not even a full year recovered from an ACL. And Dye, because we don't get a lot of in-depth college reporting on injuries, it sounds like he suffered an ACL last year, but it's been described as a serious knee injury. So I don't think either one of them get a whole lot of runs. So you're looking at the Jets are going to be predicated on running the ball. And late in the game, Chris Streveler's probably going to be under center. So, I mean, really, it's going to be run the ball or don't move the ball. So it's going to be a lot of Abandakanda in this game. If I'm picking one guy, that's probably going to be my favorite captain.
That's also why it's hard to get away from defenses this game, because both Dorian Thompson-Robinson, who is a rushing quarterback, and Chris Streveler, who is a rushing quarterback, are expected to play in the second halves. And again, these defenses are prominent because rushing quarterbacks mean sack, because they're throwing the ball less and thus getting tackled or sliding behind the line of scrimmage. So it's just really, really hard for me to get away from any defenses. Also, you mentioned running backs. What about some wide receivers? Because I do know, yes, like they're the most volatile in preseason DFS. There's so many that are going to be active tonight. They're going to rotate them, especially because, remember, the rules changed this year for preseason. Every roster is taking 90 men all the way to the final cut day. And so it's going to be wild for bigger slates parsing through it. But for tonight, I think we have a couple honed down. And although they start from zero, and every receiver's projection basically should be zero, I do think playing thin wide receivers, like taking on the minus EV, is actually plus EV, because one big catch, like that's how you get to the one big catch at 2% is how you get to the top of these fields where everyone is playing a condensed amount of high rostered players. So what about a couple thin wide receivers that people may not be on?
Well, like I talked about Jason Brownlee, I think he is going to be the uber mega chalk, because of social media, his name is in everybody's mouth. So I'm probably shying away from him. I'm not full fading him, but if I'm running 150, I'm going to be underweight the field, massively underweight the field. A bunch of guys actually stick out here to me, Daigle, is like, so you talked about the thin wide receivers. The thing I love about preseason is we look at athleticism and snaps. And when you get a combination of that, especially attuned with the athleticism, that's what we want. Like, am I that interested in tight ends that run a 4.8? Probably not. Am I that interested in wide receivers that run a 4.7 or higher? No, probably not. One of the Jets wide receivers that's far down the depth chart that really, really intrigues me is Xavier Gibson. 5'9", slot guy out of Stephen F. Austin. All of his metrics pop, dude. Like runs a 4.4, 82nd percentile agility, logged 3.4 yards per route run at Stephen F. Austin. So one of those guys that honestly could get a 5 or 10 yard crosser and take it to the house, and nobody's going to play him because he's so far down the depth chart. So on the Jets side, that's the guy that sticks out to me. Cedric Tillman is also going to be really popular, but he's the good chalk that I think you eat, because he probably gets about a half with DTR under center. And for everybody out there, they went to high school together at Bishop Gorman. So that rapport is already baked in. And then there's already camp highlights and stuff. So while I think the two most popular wide receivers in this game that are going to be in a ton of lineups are Jason Brownlee and Cedric Tillman, I would lean with Tillman. But if we're going to go off the board to thin plays, dude, the first guy I want to bring up here, and nobody's going to know his freaking name, and I didn't know his name until I looked this guy up. Thomas Greeny. Okay. He's tight end for the
This is why I brought you on, for this reason right here.
Thomas Greeny, baby. And look, he matches up with all of these things we're talking about, Daigle, is snaps and receiving opportunity. We know that the Browns have run a lot of their offense, especially in the red zone, through the tight end position. The great thing about Greeny is, while the Jets are probably going to roll out 3, maybe 4 tight ends, because I don't think Conklin and CJ Uzoma play. I'm not sure if Jeremy Ruckert has climbed high enough on the depth chart to play or not to play. I don't know what they're going to do with him tonight. So the Jets could run out as many as 4 tight ends. But over there on the Browns side, we don't have to worry about that, my dude, because David Njoku is not going to play. Harrison Bryant has been dealing with an injury. Jordan Akins has a sore knee. So we just lopped off 3 tight ends right off the top that are not going to play. That pushes the Browns down to only 2 guys playing tight end tonight. One of which is Zaire Mitchell-Payton, who is a blocking tight end, is not a pass catcher. Literally, his collegiate yards per route run, or his preseason yards per route run last year was 0.55, and he got only 3 targets. So he ain't catching no passes. Now we switch over to Thomas Greeny, who is a small school tight end from Albany. And while he's more athletically limited, like he ran a 4.8 coming out, and this is not usually a guy that I'm going to be typically that interested in. Again, we're talking about Daigle practice squad players. These are not like NFL starters. So does marginal athleticism and receiving acumen play up a little bit versus I wouldn't be interested in a normal NFL slate. But at Albany, last year, this guy had 700 receiving yards, 1.8 yards per route run, and an 86 PFF receiving grade. So when he's on the field, he's going to run routes because Mitchell-Payton is going to be the inline 12 personnel tight end to block. And so you team all of that with the fact that Kellen Mond, who's a dumpster fire trash can, I do not want to play him in this game. Right. DTR is probably going to be playing the second half. So if we're talking about going further down the depth chart as well, even if, say, Harrison Bryant plays, Thomas Greeny is going to be the one paired with DTR at the end of this game in the second half, who is the much better passer than Kellen Mond. So Thomas Greeny is my off-the-wall 0.5% touchdown call of the night.
I mean, again, it's one game. That's the exact kind of play I'm looking for, especially because, like you, I love Cedric Tillman. Big fan of his profile. He broke out with 1,000 yards and 12 touchdowns in the SEC as a 21-year-old. And then last year, remember, started his final year at Tennessee with 6 catches for 83 yards and then a 150-yard game and a touchdown, then got injured. And only then did Jalen Hyatt break out afterwards as the Biletnikoff Award winner. So Cedric Tillman has the pedigree and the archetype, 6'3", 213. I've compared him to DeAndre Hopkins since he did. I think his 19 contested catches led the nation last year. So like, yeah, he's that kind of player. But also when we're talking about preseason DFS and which positions we fade, we go back to it and it's wide receivers because everyone projects for 0. They're wide receivers in a preseason game being rotated. Thus, that's the kind of player when everyone's catching on, even if I like him, that's the kind of 1% play I say, okay, if I'm trying to get to the top, that's the guy I'm fading. And I'm instead stacking the 4th string tight end who we think is going to be on the field for 3 quarters with this popular quarterback instead. That's kind of the ideas that start working in my head as well. Moving on to the Browns, though, I think we also have dwindled down their running backs to just 2 or 3 players that are going to play. So get into that.
Yeah, so Nick Chubb is not going to play in this game. Jerome Ford I've been out with personal issues. I think I have to go back and double check. I think he returned to practice yesterday. But again, I don't think that he is going to play in this game, him or Chubb. They've already ruled out the starters and stuff like that. As high as Jerome Ford has been on the depth chart, he's not going to get any action here. So that really pairs it down to 4 guys. And I'll lop one of those guys off the list immediately, but Nate McCreary has not had one positive camp, headline, blurb, anything. I think he was just brought in as a camp body. I don't know how I'd be surprised if even we see him. Maybe he gets like a few garbage time carries, but I don't see a lot of run for him in this game. Then you also have Demetric Felton, and Felton is designated as a running back. He's not a running back. Last preseason, he played 64.2% of his snaps in the slot or out wide. He's a wide receiver and not a very good one. So I'm not worried about Felton, which leaves us, honestly, Daigle, with 2 guys. It's John Kelly Jr., and we've seen what that looks like. The Browns love to run him in the preseason, and he's not a big breakaway run guy. But what I highlighted in the article is that, you're looking at both these teams sitting somewhere around like close to a 50% pass run rate. They're going to sit here and give Kelly a lot of run. Like, I think you look at probably median for him is about 9 carries in this game. He could get 10, 12, depending on that. So I love John Kelly because he's probably going to get red zone work if they get in close. And the other guy to bring up here is Hassan Hall. And I know everybody's going to say, who the heck is Hassan Hall? But Hassan Hall is a 5'10", 190, tinier back, but he could scoot, dude. Like 89th percentile burst score, runs a 4.5. Had 3.3 yards after contact per attempt in college. Considering that, and he was a kick returner. So we might get double duty here, Daigle. Like, we might get Hassan Hall not only getting carries in this game, maybe he returns kicks, and then you can get the correlation of playing Hall and the Browns defense. And I'm not saying, like, are the chances that he returns a kick probable? No. But if he does it and he gets carries and he's the optimal captain, you're getting those points with the Browns defense on top of that if you play him at captain. So I love Hassan Hall because of not only the versatility, but honestly, it's because him and John Kelly Jr. are going to be the only two guys to really get a lot of carries in this game. And he, along with Thomas Greeny, is what I think is a fantastic dart throw.
And for the Browns, again, with it all being dwindled down, I'm trying to think through how I go about playing it. Let me sift through that, because Genji does have, not really a question, a comment, but he's obviously talking about Zach Wilson. So let's get to the quarterback projections here, because the playing time is also massive.
Yep.
Thus, how are you projecting the quarterbacks? How many quarters for each to take on tonight?
Zach Wilson, I will be surprised if we see a lot of run from him.
Because his underdog prop right now is 70.5 passing yards. And if he gets 2 drives, I highly doubt he can reach 70 yards.
I would hit the under with that. I would massively hit the under.
Making a slip behind the scenes.
Oh no, that's great, man. I mean, look, you got to get those bets in. Underdog pushes these preseason lines. Like, as soon as they're released, I'm like, bet it, because they move so fast, dude. But with Zach Wilson, yeah, I would take the under with that. I mean, I think he gets 1 to 2 drives. Maybe they leave him out over 3 series, but again, we're talking about a guy who in the preseason, we've seen what he's done in the NFL regular season. Even in the preseason, Daigle, he's not been good. He has a 5.4 ADOT. Like, he's literally just like, captain check down, just don't try to screw it up. I don't think any of that's going to change in this game. Like, he's not going to go out there and just leave it all in the field and be humming rockets down the field. So I think it's really just don't screw up for Zach Wilson. Probably see him only like play 2 drives. Tim Boyle's the other Jets quarterback that's probably going to get a little bit of run here. I think depending on how long they leave out Wilson, Boyle is the sandwich filler. It's probably not high grade, well sliced deli meat that we're talking about here. Probably pimento cheese. So with Boyle, it's probably, I would project him probably around a quarter. Maybe a little bit more than that, depending on what they give Zach Wilson. Like, if Zach Wilson plays half a quarter, I think they'll let Tim Boyle go for the rest of the first half. If Zach Wilson gets a full quarter, then Tim Boyle probably gets the rest of the first half. So probably a quarter is about median for him. And I mean, the preseason GOAT, the king himself, Chris Streveler, probably gets the entire second half. If I were to project that. So, like, if not a quarter. I think that the basement bottom line for him, Daigle, for Streveler is 1 quarter, but I would be really surprised if he didn't start the second half. So, I mean, Streveler playing almost a half. I mean, he has got to be up there. Like, him and DTR are my 2 favorite quarterbacks in this game because they run. And we have a long history of Chris Streveler playing really well in the preseason, like 63 preseason passing attempts, 9.4 ADOT, 7.3 yards per attempt. He's got a 6-to-1 passing touchdown to interception ratio, and he's run for 6.1 yards per carry, man. So you're looking at correlating some guys in Jets lineups. If you're playing Streveler, I'm probably not playing one of his pass catchers, but I'll probably just sit here and stack him in the essence of we're just going to stack the ground game and play it that way. So Chris Streveler and Izzy Abanikanda is probably my favorite Jets pairing.
I think if I'm play a Jets wide receiver, not that I will, but Alex Erickson would be my pick just because he was signed. He was just signed a couple weeks ago and has had success in the NFL as a receiver with the Bengals. Since he was signed so late, that means he's going to be fighting to make the final roster, which those are the guys we play in preseason. So that means he'll probably be playing at least a quarter and a half with Chris Streveler. So however many times Streveler actually dropped back and looks upfield rather than taking off, I think Erickson will at least be in there in the 4th quarter with him. Any notes on different coaching styles here compared to usual? Because yes, Kevin Stefanski has historically leaned on a rushing attack, but
Mm-hmm.
has he treated his offense differently in the preseason as some coaches and OCs tend to do?
He has been very, very different. And I highlighted this in my full article, which is about 4,000 words of DGen goodness on FantasyPros right
You
now.
fucking sicko. A preseason showdown slate and you reached 4,000 words.
I know it. Okay.
I guess that's why you're here right now. So yeah.
36 players. I couldn't stop, Daigle. Okay. This is my love letter to all the DGens out there. Okay. The great thing about Stefanski is, yes, so I went back through 2 different seasons. I went back through Nathaniel Hackett's final season as the Green Bay OC and saw what he did in the preseason, as well as highlighting what Stefanski did the entire preseason last year. And yes, I went through play-by-play and all that kind of stuff. So I'm a total psycho. But what he did was really interesting. So last year in the preseason, had a 57% passing rate, which is higher. Like, you're looking at this guy, and we talk about Stefanski as a run game zealot. In the preseason, he's throwing the ball more, because you compare that against Nathaniel Hackett, who was only throwing the ball at 50% in 2021 with the Packers. So Stefanski, the big thing is, not only has he thrown the ball a lot in the preseason, he's also inside the red zone. They have thrown the ball more than they have run. So 53.5% red zone passing rate, which is massive compared to, again, if we're looking for the touchdowns in this game, Daigle, Nathaniel Hackett loves to run the ball when he gets in close. 60% red zone rushing rate in 2021. So if we're chasing touchdowns in this game, you've got equal bets on both sides of the aisle for the Browns to either throw or run. They might lean a little more in the pass, which is what people are not going to believe. If I were to ask just a normal nerd with their spreadsheets, hey, who do you think is going to throw more in the red zone in this game? Most people would probably say Nathaniel Hackett, but that's not the case. So I'm going to sit here and lean a little bit more towards the Browns passing attack and hope that I get the touchdowns right off of, what the consensus idea is. Thomas Greeny, come on down, versus the Jets, who I'm going to lean into their ground game, which is going to be Strevler and Izzy Bandicanda.
And finally, let's sift through some ideal captains for everyone. Right now, who would you say are your top 3? I'm actually going to guess that defenses will be the highest roster captains tonight.
Yep, I think they are too. And while I'm going to have a lot of builds with the defenses, I'm probably not going to run them at captain. I'm probably just going to hope that I catch catch lightning in a bottle and I get the touchdowns right.
And again, if we think
in this game.
And if we think we're getting an edge on some of these guys we talked about, then remember, you can still, if they're optimal, you definitely can captain defenses. You just have to remember to then get unique around it.
Oh, absolutely. Like, if you're playing one of the defenses, I'm automatically getting weird. Like, I'm throwing Xavier Gibson in that lineup. I'm throwing Thomas Greeny. Maybe I play both kickers, because a lot of people will play one of the kickers, but not both. But I'd say probably my 3 favorite captains in this game, Daigle. Oh, Strevler is going to be 1. DTR is probably 2. And Abanikanda 3. Just because I think that these are the guys that are going to have possibly the highest upside. But I think more contrarian options are also I'm probably going to run anywhere between 10 and 20 lineups tonight, Daigle. And I'm usually a single entry 3 max guy, but I want to get exposure to all these. So outside of those top 3, just because of playing time and just absolute upside, the guys I would like to go off the board with, like I said, Thomas Greeny, Hassan Hall, and probably Xavier Gibson.
Okay. And then for me, I think I'll probably try some defense, some 1-5 builds with the captain defense, and then running back 5 players on offense from the other side of the ball. I'll probably sneak that in, including some kickers. I like your idea of Greeny with Dorian Thompson and getting off Cedric Tillman, even though I will still play Cedric Tillman in some lineups. And then I like
play both in some lineups, because then you're just playing, in that optimal sense, you play DTR a captain and say that he throws for 2 touchdowns and I just get the 2 guys that he gets right. I get the 2 touchdowns.
And then I like playing Hassan Hall and John Kelly together.
Yep.
There are players who pop every year in the preseason, and then they just, because we've played so long, they come back the next year because that's what they do. They're just fighting to make rosters, and they're so good in preseason games that then they stay on practice squads for the rest of the year. And John Kelly is that guy. John Kelly's that guy. He's been a preseason stud for like 3 years in a row now. He's good against the 4th and 5th stringers.
Yeah, he absolutely is, man. And when I was going to write this thing up, I was like, all right, what about Michael Woods, baby? He won me some money last preseason. And then I'm looking for highlights or anything about Michael Woods, and I'm like, there's nothing. Okay, well, I'm not playing Michael Woods. All right, fine, whatever.
All right. With that being said, D-Bro, tell everyone where to find you and what you have out at Fantasy Pros right now.
Oh, man, all of the sicko content is up at Fantasy Pros. So this article, I honestly looked at week 1 DK pricing as well already. So a few standouts from week 1 DraftKings pricing. That article is up on Fantasy Pros as well. And my magnum opus of the draft season, considering we have flipped the script and it is August, so it is all drafts all the time now.
Yep.
I have my perfect draft article live on Fantasy Pros, which basically I run through, I think it's almost 60 or 70 players, taking you through every single round of the draft and even giving you final round targets. You want to talk about DGen love? That is my heavy lifting and my love letter for everybody out there for fantasy season.
That's it. Until then, we will be back next Tuesday. Actually, quick promotion. I'll be doing a live $1,900 fantasy football draft on FFPC solo tomorrow night, 9 p.m. Eastern. Ooh. It's actually the first live main event of the season. So I wanted to get in and set the ADP as opposed to letting it be set for me. So I'll be doing that live for everyone, just myself, the chat, and lots of drinks. So tune into that. Until then, be a little bit kinder than what's required. We'll see you next time.